Grandmaster Pal Benko passed away recently at the age of 91. He leaves to the chess world an amazing collection of great games, writings, and chess compositions. Back in 1970, he gave his slot in the inner zonal to Bobby Fischer, who used it to become world champion in 1972. Grandmaster Benko also invented the Benko Gambit shown on the board, in which Black gives up a pawn early in the game for fascinating compensation. Grandmaster Benko opened the game we've chosen to review today with 1c4 against Israel Horowitz in the US Championship in 1968. We're going to zip through the opening stage of the game as Grandmaster Benko adopts an interesting double fianchetto setup against a triangle system from Black. Of course, the fianchetto, if you're not familiar with that chess term, simply refers to a situation in which we're putting our bishop on the longest diagonal on the board, typically b2, g2, b7, or g7 if you're playing Black. This is, of course, a very strong position for the bishop, but it takes a little bit of time to get the bishop into these positions early in the game. Black, on the other hand, has adopted a triangle system, which is a very sturdy setup that you could use against such a setup from White if you would like to. At this point in the game, Black expands with the move a5, looking to advance the pawn further and disrupt Benko's structure. Benko is having none of it and simply plays the move a3, so that if a4, he can respond with b4 and keep his good structure on the queen side, and Black's a-pawn would possibly be a little overextended, even weak in this position. Now, to advance a little further, after the move a3, Black expands with c5, thinking about pushing onward with d4, which would close down this bishop. This is the time for Grandmaster Benko to act. He trades on d5 and strikes in the center of the board with pawn d4. Grandmaster Benko is one of those modern players who's famous for playing in a hyper-modern style. If you don't know what hyper-modern chess is, it essentially means focusing on developing your pieces and not occupying the center with pawns right away. However, this is in no way an attempt to neglect the center of the board, and Grandmaster Benko does go back and strike in the center with his pawns later. He's hoping that his increased piece development will allow him to strike effectively at this stage of the game. Black plays knight a6, and I think we can already see at this stage that White has some advantage. Black's pawns feel a little bit misplaced, a little bit weak, and certainly this knight on a6, although it's hoping to make a journey into the center of the board if White captures on c5, is not well placed at the moment, and Grandmaster Benko is going to try and keep it on a6 for as long as he can. Grandmaster Benko expands with knight c3, developing, Black develops with bishop f5, and now knight e5 comes, unleashing the bishop on g2. After a trade on d4 and the queen's recapture, we start to see some danger brewing from Black, or for Black. We start to envision a possible checkmate if the queen ever got to this square, supported by the bishop on b2. However, there is a lot of cavalry in the way, as both Black and White have a lot of knights in the path at the moment. And that finish isn't going to be the exact finish we see in the game, it's just the kind of danger Black starts to face as White's bishops are unleashed. Black plays the move knight c5, which threatens this pawn here on b3. Now, when you feel like you have a strong position, as White certainly should feel in this position with his bishops and his knights and his queen all on active squares, you should not respond to a threat defensively if you can help it. Don't start to think, oh, this attack on b3 is the most important thing, I need to respond to that. Instead, look to keep the initiative and execute on your own threats. That's what Grandmaster Benko does right now as he takes on d5. He allows the capture on b3. The ultimate outcome is after this fork here, where Black is hitting both the queen and the rook, is that Black is going to capture on a1. However, that rook on a1 was not participating in the attack for White, and it does cost Black some time to go capture that rook. In the meantime, Benko is going to be attacking. He moves his queen and hits the loose bishop on f5. It's already at this stage of the game, only move 15, that Black makes a losing mistake. At this point, the computer points out bishop e6, which would help Black maintain a playable position, and Black is not lost yet. However, this is a very sharp position and black already has many choices. The wrong choice that black made in the game is knight takes d5. This certainly looks plausible. We're capturing a piece and we're eliminating one of white's best attacking pieces. The knight on d5 is certainly a piece we are scared of in this position if we are black. However, queen takes on f5, and now having said A, black kind of needs to say B. If you make a defensive move at this point, the rest of white's pieces quickly come into play, and white is just so active that the position is quite crushing. Black feels compelled at this stage of the game to capture here on a1. Now, please pause your video and try to figure out what Grandmaster Benko played in this position, a striking blow that probably black missed. The winning move that Grandmaster Benko played is knight takes f7, exclamation point. So this is actually a clearance sacrifice. The knight takes a pawn that looks thoroughly defended to open up the queen's attack here on d5. The main point is that after rook takes f7, bishop takes d5, white is going to get the rook on f7 and also the knight on a1, emerging at least one pawn up. White should be winning after all the fireworks settled down and he's recouped his material. Instead, after knight takes f7, we should give credit to Horowitz here. He finds an excellent defensive move. He tries queen c8 in this position. If white should trade his attacking queen, then black is actually not really much worse in the position that emerges. Also, if white makes a passive move with his queen to retreat to avoid the trade of queens, black has gained some really useful time and again has good chances to hold on. However, there is another strong move in this position, and again, I would encourage you to pause your video and try and figure out what Grandmaster Benko played right here. The next knockout blow that he found is knight to h6 check. Of course, the main point is that if the knight is captured, the bishop can capture here on d5, and it is mate in only a couple more moves. Black can block with the queen on e6, black can block with the rook on f7. After those pieces are captured, it's simply checkmate and white has won the game. Instead, black played the move king to h8 in this position, and white took on d5. At this point, I think that Grandmaster Horowitz knew that the position was over. There's simply no way to defend, so he allows white to execute his idea in this position, and he plays knight c2. The next move from Grandmaster Benko forced Grandmaster Horowitz to resign. Again, please pause your video and try to figure out what Grandmaster Benko did in this position. He plays the move queen to g8 check. We have to reset the counter here because this is another example of the famous smothered mate. If you've never seen this before, you are a lucky person to get to be introduced to this famous pattern in chess. It's also called Philidor's Legacy after François-André Philidor. And in the resulting position here, after the forced move rook takes g8, you have knight f7 checkmate. Black's king is surrounded by his pawns and his rook. He has nowhere to go. He is checkmated by the lone knight with the classic smothered mate pattern. If this is new to you, replay it a few times because you will get an opportunity in your chess career to play this. It is much more common than you might think. The queen sacrifice to force the king to block his escape squares does come up in chess, and it is a rich opportunity. I hope that you've enjoyed this game from Grandmaster Benko. Please do check out our article on his life and career, and please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.